start?
Yes, ma'am. We're just logging into Facebook Live and we are on.
Make sure everybody's there before you go on live. Yeah. Namaste, Dr. Ganesh. Yeah, Maharaji is also there.
Namaste.
Namaskar, Maharaji.
Namaste.
Maharaj, I have a question.
Maharaji.
Namaste, Maharaj. I just had a small question before we go live. Is what have you done your PhD in, please? Which department?
German philosophy.
German philosophy.
Yeah.
We are live.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Namaste, Ganeshji.
Namaste, namaste.
Good evening, Namaskar. I'm Dr. Richa Chopra, officiating head of Contemplative and Behavioral Sciences at Sri Sri University. Our understanding and experience of the world is largely a subjective experience. And all this takes place in our heads. Whatever is enacted on this mind stage will get projected in the world outside. Who is writing the scripts of our mind? Who are the characters of a mind? And are these characters villains or are these characters the hero? What are the thoughts in our mind? What is our mind busy with? What is the understanding of mind as a stage and its role in our well-being? Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, founder of the Art of Living, says, to keep up with the times, you need to be creative and innovative. For that, you need to take care of the container of all creativity, which is the mind. And meditation is the technology to do that. Let me take the privilege to introduce Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary, Assistant Professor, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at IIT Kharagpur, and we together will be anchoring the show today. Dr. Anuradha has a PhD in Vedic psychology. Over to Dr. Anuradha. The mic has to be switched on, Dr. Anuradha.
Namaste, and a very warm welcome to everybody on this show today. I'm sure that you're looking forward eagerly to listening to our eminent panelists who will be speaking on a very important topic, the mind stage and the role that mind plays in ensuring our well-being. So, coming from an Indian perspective, we find that Sanskrit literature is replete with discussions on the mind. The Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna very famously says, he says, Chanchalam hi manah Krishna, Pramathi balavad dridham, tasyaham nigraham manye, vayo riva sudushkaram. So he says that the mind is so active, it's so disturbed, and it's so fleeting, O Krishna. And controlling that is attempting to almost control the wind. So we see that this instrument of ours plays a very important role in determining how we perceive life and how we then experience it for ourselves. And therefore, our ancients gave a lot of importance in trying to understand the nature of the mind. They invested a lot in trying to first gather themselves, get information about what are the filters, who are these characters, as Richaji beautifully said, on this mind stage. Because once they had a better understanding of that, then they would have greater control in rewriting the script of their life in a way that would be beneficial for them. So with these few words, it is a great privilege to introduce the panelists one by one. The first person that I would like to introduce to you is Professor Ganesh Rao. Professor Ganesh Rao has a very interesting background, a very inspiring background. He started off as a football player and he's played for India in the Asian Games also. And then his journey took him into the world of yoga, and he's done his further studies in that field. And he has conducted more than 19,500, but I think that's a very old number. I think now he must be easily over 20,000 sessions, including various aspects of the mind and its relationship with the rest of our system. And he is a member of the selection panel also with ICCR, the Indian Council of Cultural Relationship. There's a lot to say about each of these panelists, but in the interest of time, I would like to convey my hearty pranams to Professor Ganesh Rao and welcome him on this session.
Namaste to everyone.
Namaste. The next person I would like to introduce is Swami Medhananda ji. Swamiji has recently been ordained in the Ramakrishna Mission Mutt in Belur, and he is the head of the Department of Philosophy at the Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda Educational and Research Institute at Belur Mutt. He is also he was a brahmachari with the name of Buddha Chaitanya. But what is very interesting about him is that he grew up in the US and he's done his PhD in German philosophy at the University of California in Berkeley. And then he found his calling in truths which are deeper, that the Indic mind, the Indic ancestors have spoken about. So with these words, I welcome Swamiji on this session. Thank you very much for giving us the privilege of being on this panel today. The next person is Anupama Bhagwatji. Anupama ji is a sitar musician par excellence, and she has carved a niche for herself in the Indian classical music world. And she's one of the leading disciples of Pandit Shri Bimalendu Mukherjee, who's a doyen of the Imdad Khani Gharana. And she's been conferred the title of Surmani by the Sursingar Sansad in Mumbai. And she's basically a very well-known player across the world. She holds a master's in music from the Indira Kala Sangeet Vishwavidyalaya. And besides that, she will also be enchanting us with some of her music. And her role in this course has been to highlight the importance that music and art also play in helping us cultivate our mind. So Anupama ji, a very hearty welcome to you too on this session.
Namaste. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be amongst all of great speakers. Thank you.
I take the opportunity to introduce the other panelists. Professor Jagjeevan Kaur has 27 years of experience in teaching, and she was a former faculty in the Department of Human Development and Family Studies, Government Home Science College, Chandigarh. And she has also written a resource book for 3 to 4 year kids, a resource book for teachers, activities for 3 to 4 year kids. And she has taken many, many workshops. She is an active counselor, and she also happens to be my teacher. When I was doing my master's, she was my teacher. It's an honor to have you with us, Professor Jagjeevan Kaur, on this panel. Our next panelist is a very renowned psychologist, Professor Damodar Swar, and he is a visiting professor in the Department of Social Sciences and Humanities at IIT Kharagpur. And he is a very big name in the country and has really contributed to the academic world with his insights on psychology, research, and many other areas. Welcome, Dr. Swar, to this panel. Our next guest is Dr. Ravindra, and he's an associate professor from the Department of Neurophysiology, Center of Consciousness Studies, NIMHANS, Bengaluru. And very interestingly, though he's a medical doctor, MD, medicine. He has done his interest is in consciousness studies, which is very, very unique. And he has also been a part of Mind and Life Institute and has worked very closely with His Holiness Dalai Lama Ji. Our last panelist for today is Dr. Neena Bansalji, who is a senior Art of Living teacher for the last 15 years. And she's also an associate professor at Kamala Nehru College, Delhi University. And she's also the convener of the Gandhi Circle. And currently she has been contributing a lot to the academic world, writing a lot of papers in the area of Indic studies, if I am correct, Dr. Bansal. So welcome to the forum. And
thank you, Richa ji. Thank you I am privileged to be a part of this panel.
Yes. Yes. So we will proceed now, and may I invite Dr. Ganesh Rao and then all the other speakers after him. And the question and the point of discussion today is, what in your understanding is the mind, and what is the role of mind in its well-being? Professor Ganesh Rao.
Thank you, Dr. Richa. As usual, it's a pleasure to be in the group of my colleagues. We have been sharing time and thoughts over the last 3-4 months, trying to devise the syllabus of DCBS. This is one more occasion to share some thoughts on a very important topic. And we have the advantage of the last webinar conducted 1 week back on the same topic. So at least some repetitions, if at all it happens by default, can be avoided. Yeah. When it comes to mind, like most of the important things, easily understood, but almost impossible to define. In the scriptures, like what Dr. Narada quoted the Bhagavad Gita, talking about the fleeting nature of the mind, there are references to compare mind with the butterfly or the monkey, which both of them apparently involuntarily moving from one place to another, instability, total. I find this reference respectable to human mind. If the definition of modern human mind was to be given with a slight modification, then popularly the modern human mind can be defined as a monkey which has taken a shot of whiskey and which is stung by a wasp. That goes to, describe the nature of modern mind with all the gadgets available. The span of attention and concentration is so less. We keep on fitting here and there, and to great extent, that is the problem of the mind. But coming back to philosophy, taking up from where Mataji spoke last time, yes, we talk about Antakarana in Indian philosophy, comprising of Chitta, Buddhi, Manas, Ahankar, but going a little bit deeper, and deeper in the sense of making a distinction of the way of looking at mind from the Indian philosophical side. In Sankhya and Yoga particularly, mind is coming from Prakriti, which is the principle of matter. So in Indian philosophy, mind is matter. Yeah, this is a basic distinction that is made. Normally, what is non-material is considered as mental, but in Indian philosophy, mind is also matter. Yeah. And when we talk about mind as matter, we talk about Sukshma Sharira. The mind is subtle matter. And that is why we say it is not perceivable by the sense organs. And from this background, metaphysical background, we get a very good understanding of the mind, that unlike the brain, the heart, or the kidney, or the lungs, the mind does not have a structural presence in the body. It has only a functional presence. Only when the function of the mind is there, the mind comes into existence. And this is the reason why probably Patanjali defines yoga as Chitta Vritti Nirodha and not Chitta Nirodha. Because when the vrittis of the mind, the functions of the mind stop, there is no mind. And the moment mind is not there, Tada Drashtu Surupe Avasthanam, the self is established in its own nature. Having said that, the second point, because mind is matter, matter by nature is jada or unconscious. So the mind is also unconscious to begin with. And this unconscious mind has to be energized or made conscious by the consciousness. Only when it is made conscious, then it becomes the interface between the self and the world there. This fact of the mind being enervated, made conscious, energized by the consciousness has got, far-reaching consequences when it comes to controlling the mind. So the mind is jada, it is an interface between the self and the world. As an interface between the self and the world, it provides all the knowledge of the world through the medium of sense organs, all the knowledge, but it is always knowledge about. The mind is always about something. Yeah. So on one side, there is the self. On the other side, in the middle, there is the mind and the world there. The world is externally oriented through the sense organs. All the knowledge is coming. All our progress that we have made in the external world is because the mind through the sense organs is externally oriented. But the self there, which is the real nature in Indian philosophy, that self, for the mind to come to the self, is the basic issue. Only when the mind goes out of the scene, the self gets realized, tada drashtu sarupe avasthanam. And that mind going out of the scene is the experience of meditation when you go to the Unmani avastha or the no mind state. Having said this, what happens today is the mind and the body, which actually are instruments for reaching the goal of life, they are taken as the end goal. And that is where pure materialism has created such havoc in our modern day life, because the self is kept in the background and we are going only towards the physical and the mental progress and pleasure there. Very nicely, one can say either the mind brings about a magic in life, a miracle in life, or it makes a mess of life. Most of the time, it makes a mess of life. It makes a mess because we don't understand it. And because we don't understand it, we are not able to control it. And now the most important thing, understanding the mind, learning about the mind or controlling the mind cannot be done by the mind. Trying to control the mind by the mind, which science does, which we do through our intellect, is like trying to raise yourself up with your shoelaces. You can't pick yourself up from the shoelaces. Or if I'm very close at home, then trying to control the mind by the mind is like corrupt administrators passing a resolution on non-corruption. Not possible. Not possible at all. One is not possible, one is not probable. So the question comes about, how do we control this mind? And this is where the entire forte of Indian philosophy or Eastern philosophy, I don't mind saying Eastern philosophy, because last webinar there was some discussion about not bringing about dichotomy. Personally, I feel this dichotomy has to be there, but when we are referring to Western or Eastern, our biases and prejudices should not be there. But when I use Western philosophy, I encompass a lot of things in that Western philosophy, which otherwise I would have to describe the Western philosophy. So Western and Eastern are just labels. The problem comes up only when our labels have got our prejudices and biases or conditioning there. So if we keep them away, then no harm at all in utilizing the two words, because I am making this point because the mind by nature is dichotomous. One of the principles of the operations of the mind given by Carl Jung was the principle of opposites. The mind cannot work linearly. This is the problem of modern day. When I say some person is good, I already have the idea what it is to be bad. Then only I can say the person is good. The mind cannot operate without being dichotomous. It is inherently dichotomous. And the whole of the Eastern philosophy or Western philosophy is, how do I go beyond this dichotomy to reach the no mind state where magic is waiting to happen? So my point is exclusively You cannot understand or try to understand the mind only scientifically. This is what probably the point was made by Professor Mishra in the last session, that don't try to understand objectively, because there is a lot of subjectivity. I am seeing Anuradhaji's hand going up. I'll just take one more minute. Yeah, I'm aware of timing. Yeah. So the question is, if you want to understand the mind, yes, intellectually, scientifically, making the mind as an object is fine. But the question is, can I understand the mind subjectively? And that is where the most significant tool in the Eastern side, in Indian philosophy side, is the concept of awareness. And that is why meditation is placed as the highest practice in all forms of spirituality, because only when the meditation becomes successful, you get a glimpse of what is awareness. And that is one more distinction between probably the Western or Eastern. In the Indian side, consciousness is a noun. In the Western side, most of the time it is a verb. We are talking about pure awareness, which is possible to be there. Whereas when we talk about in science and other things, consciousness is always object oriented or intentional. In the Indian side, consciousness can exist by itself. And that is the pure awareness. That is the Sakshi Bhava, or the witnessing stance, which is given so much significance on the Eastern side. I have answered my first question. Have I time?
No, I think if you don't mind, Ganesh,
Yeah, you can
thank
go
you
to the
very much. Thank
Yeah.
you very much for encapsulating in such a short while such a broad spectrum of the understanding of the mind in the Indic perspective. And I love the fact of what you said, that mind is like the magic. Mind has the capacity of creating that magic and being also the link between the world and the self. And if one is not aware of that, what you ended with, then we end up having life as a mess. So thank you very much for those very deep insights in
Thank
such
you
a
very much.
practical manner. I would next like to invite Dr. Neena Bansal to kindly share her thoughts on the role of the mind, and especially in our well-being.
Thank you, Anuradha ji. And thank you, Dr. Rao, for such lovely explanation about the mind. And I would like to start by posing a simple question, like simple exercise in front of all of us. Think what you don't know. Can you think what you don't know? Or where does logic comes from? Logic comes from knowledge. And since our knowledge is limited, logic is also limited. And just, look around and see the problems in this world today probably is from the space of my knowledge and my logic, isn't it? So actually, if we see that what is the real cause of problems and conflicts all around the world today, the conflicts, the problems, the frustration, the anxiety and depression, don't we see, as Professor Rao also comprehended in his beautiful understanding, that it is the mind which causes a lot of problem in our life. This is one of the aspects of mind. I am not saying that mind only causes problems, but it has this aspect too. So there are very, very many tendencies of the mind. And I would like to focus only on two tendencies of the mind. Mind has a tendency to cling onto the negative. So if someone comes and tells us, you're so beautiful, and gives us 10 praises, and gives us one negative comment, our mind actually will hold on to that one negative comment. We will forget about the 10 praises that have been given to us. Yes. So this is a tendency of the mind. We hold on. If we look at the past, we generally tend to cling on to the negative moments in our life. And there is yet another tendency of the mind, which is very well known to all of us. This is the vacillation in the past and the future. Vacillating the mind in the past, it gives us what? It gives us regret. It gives us guilt. And going to the future, anxiety, fear. And where can we live? We cannot go and live in the past or the future. We have to live here right this moment. This is another tendency of the mind. And this is the tendency of the human mind. Human being anywhere on this planet has these tendency for sure. Now this vacillation, clinging on to the negative, all these tendencies, like these two tendencies basically are creating a lot of stress in our life. So 80% plus problems, or maybe, there are researches also on the mind and the impact of mind on the body. 80% plus diseases are psychosomatic. That means to say that they come from mind. And so this is to say that mind is taking care of the 80% of our problems in life, maybe mental or maybe, health related. So now what to do? How to handle the mind in a manner that it becomes a source of positivity and well-being instead of a source of negativity and ill health. Now, herein comes the role of, as along with awareness, as Dr. Rao also talked about, the role of breath. The role of breath in a life is very, very important. If you have observed, have you noticed every emotion has a corresponding breathing pattern? How do we breathe when we are angry? How is the breath? The breath is actually heavy and fast, and the body gets hot. It's time? Okay, just 1 minute. And what happens when we are nervous or frightened? So the breath is shallow and the body gets cold. So now this is a one-way street. If only we flip it other side and make it a two-way street. So if my breath is getting affected by my emotions, can I breathe in a pattern so my emotions are balanced? Because as it has been referred to by again by the panelists, that mind cannot be controlled from the level of the mind because it is very subtle. More tangible than the mind is actually the breath. So we can control the mind, or we can you be in control of the mind through breath. Thank you. Do I have more time, or it's okay?
We have about 3 minutes per panel, and then we will take up questions so that everybody gets the time. Thank you so much, Dr. Bansal, for your very insightful practical inputs with regards to the nature of the mind, and that breath being the thread to bring the mind from its oscillating nature to the present moment, and that can really help in governing our emotions. Before I invite Professor Jagjeevan Kaur, may I request Jyoti to read out one question from the audience, and anyone from the panel can answer that. We have about 1.5 to 2 minutes to answer the question. Yes, Jyoti, you can take one question. You can read out one question from the audience.
Right. So the first question is, what is the importance of an enriched environment for development of mind and well-being?
What is the importance of an enriched environment for the development of mind? So any panelist can raise their hand and answer in about 1.5 to 2 minutes. Yes, Professor Kaur, I see her hand first. The mic has to be unmuted, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Well, the first few years of a child's life are very critical for the lifelong development of his personality, and definitely it has a tremendous impact on his mental and cognitive faculties. Consider a child in a deprived environment where there are no toys, the mother has no time for the child, he has got no good nutrition, how can such a mind develop adequately to face the challenges of coming life, develop the concepts, develop understanding, as compared to another child who's being reared up in a stimulating environment where a mother is constantly talking to her, giving adequate stimulation in forms of an enriched environment. Such a child is going to develop definitely a very wholesome cognitive structure and a mind eventually. The neurosciences have been demonstrating that the first 3 years of life see marked development and multiplication of neural connections, which are responsible for the kind of thought processes and the kind of logical thoughts or difficult operations that our mind can operate, and the way we interpret our other domains of development, that is socio-emotional aspects, understanding of others, empathy, cooperation, all that depends on the kind of neuro connections that we develop in the brain. If we deprive a child of an enriched environment, we are doing great damage, which is cumulative in nature, because again, researches and studies show that later development is based on preceding development. And if we do not give adequate attention to earlier developments of childhood, definitely the later developments in all aspects, whether it is going to be emotional or cognitive, are going to be hampered by this deficit. So therefore, an enriched environment which fosters curiosity, exploration, joy, happiness, work with the team members, understanding adult relationships, gives him a sense of security, is going to be very, very beneficial for his later mental health and emotional and social well-being. That's it. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kaur, for sharing your thoughts on that. I'd like to request Dr. Ravindran to kindly share your thoughts on the same question.
Thank you very much. So in continuation with Dr. Kaur, what she mentioned, the enriched environment is very much essential throughout the lifespan of anybody's life. But what actually is this enriched environment? It varies from in the different stages of life. Now, when Dr. Kaur mentioned about the childhood development, not only that, even the prenatal enriched environment of a pregnant woman is also very, very important for these basic neuronal connections to happen. Because all of the psychiatric disorders that we see when it emerges, say in the adult or the adolescent period, it has been attributed for some of the misconnections that can happen even at the prenatal developmental period. I'll give you say, for example, if a pregnant woman is in a very stressful environment, right, an external environment, and also if external environment is very conducive, but if a pregnant woman doesn't have her mental environment in a very positive mode, that we call it as a micro environment, that has a very detrimental effect on the developmental of the fetus. And the neural connection that can happen, or where the REM comes down during the, in the fetal stage, studies have shown that this has a lot of repercussion where in the adult and adolescent period, that particular child can develop an anxiety, it can develop a depression, it can develop an ADHD, and so much and so forth. So this is about the prenatal. And as soon as a child is born, Dr. Kaur has really given a very good view of that. But when a child gets into adolescent or adult stage. And when psychologically that person has developed a metacognitive ability to understand his or her own thoughts, right? And where that independent way of thinking is developed, the metacognitive abilities is been developed, then the whole enriched environment is shifted from the external environment to the internal environment of its mind environment. So that we call it a psychological environment or the micro environment that plays a very important role in shaping the maturation of the brain in terms also and also of the mind also in terms of neuroscience. So if we don't have that positive mental environment that we carry, right, it has its own detrimental effect on the neuroplasticity changes that can happen in the brain. So this enriched environment, no doubt, the external environment plays an important role. The internal environment of the psychological environment also plays a very important role, right, in shaping the brain and shaping the mind. And this plays a very, very basic fundamental thing is to go ahead towards a well-being.
Thank you, Dr. Pinna and Dr. Kaur for throwing such significant insights into the early childhood years and also the later years and the importance of an enriched environment in creating our psychological constructs. May I invite Viplav to ask another question from the audience before we go on to listening to Dr. Kaur. Dr. Viplav, yes, another question.
What is the significance of contemplation in psychology?
Can I invite Professor Swar to address this question? What is the significance of contemplation in psychology? Dr. Swar is teaching psychology in IIT Kharagpur. It would be nice to hear his perspectives on amalgamating contemplation in Western psychology. Professor Swar.
It's because contrast to the modern psychology, which is primarily experimental in nature and objective in nature, contemplation is completely subjective, and it provides a rich source of evidence. And such contemplation methods like starts from yoga, meditation, to introspection, thinking and reflection, argumentation, and many other things provide a rich set of evidence on the basis of which this psychology can be gauged and it can be understood, rather than purely emphasizing on experimentation and observation and hardcore facts. And therefore, our point is that this contemplation is not available in modern psychology or Western psychology. Beginning from Arthashastra, Yoga Sutra to many of the scriptures that were in the past, they provided a wealth of evidence for contemplation, and mixing the contemplation with modern psychology, we can have a greater bandwidth of knowledge to understand the mind, behavior, and subjectivity.
Thank you,
have
Dr.
I answered your question?
Yes, yes, Dr.
Okay.
Yes, Dr. Swar. I would like Dr. Ganesh Rao to now speak of contemplation and psychology. In few words, before we go to Dr. Jagjeevan Kaur.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I was reserving my response to this question for the last question of the day as far as DCBS is concerned. Yeah, the significance and the unique endeavor of DCBS, because that is where the distinction arises between contemplation and behavioral sciences. Yeah. If we refer to psychology as loaded on the side of behavior, then it is more outward looking, more social oriented. Whereas when you talk about contemplation, the term contemplation needs to be defined properly, because lots of time thinking can also be talked about as contemplation. No, contemplation has got a slight difference as far as the subject matter is concerned. It is more sanctified subjects, more profound thinking, and more thinking where it goes beyond day-to-day life and goes into questions like purpose of life, why are we here, a slight of seriousness that is involved there. So contemplation is more inward looking. It is more directed towards, if I talk from Indian philosophy side, it is more directed towards yourself with S capital, whereas behavioral sciences talks about, self with S small. That is the biggest distinction. And in DCBS, what we are trying to do, let me answer it fully. A pat on the back for DCBS. This is the most unique endeavor that we are combining this, internal looking approach and external looking approach. And this is where I say we not only understand the mind fully and the human being fully, resulting thereby in creating a human being of a different kind and not of a different degree. It's a totally different kind. Otherwise, we become from good, better, best. But here it is total transformation of the human being which happens. And this is what probably, whether it is Gurdjieff or J. Krishnamurti or Osho, have been talking about transformation of the human being. Transformation does not happen at the level of the mind, because mind is limited by nature. Transformation happens at the level of consciousness, and that is where the significance of contemplation happens. That you go inwards and then give that benefit to the outward world. Like what we spoke about last time, that just going inwards is no use, because your presence or existence does not matter to any person else. But if you don't understand yourself, you will not be able to help the other person. Both are necessary. Contemplative sciences are the foundation or the fulcrum from which behavioral sciences have to take off. Yeah. Whereas we are concentrating only on the behavioral sciences without, it's like Freud saying, for a psychoanalyst has to go through training of psychoanalyst under a psychoanalyst for 2 or 3 years. Also, the psychoanalyst has to psychoanalyze himself first, herself first. Then only he or she can do psychoanalysis. Yeah. So contemplation is a beautiful subject, and hats off to DCBS of Sri Sri University for coming out with this, particularly to Dr. Richa, being the hub for making this issue very live. Hope we have one of the most unique, syllabuses and courses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rao, for putting it so beautifully, that it is from inside to outside. It is, contemplation is not restricting oneself to being at one's own level, but it is being able to serve others also. And that service can only happen when one is really connected to one's own source. We still have about 2 minutes to invite Professor Kaur. So can we take one more question?
Yes,
Jyoti?
yes.
Jyoti?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ready with the
One quick question.
Yes.
Yes.
So our next question is, what would be the scope after pursuing the psychology and contemplative studies with Sri Sri University, DCBS department? What would be the scope of employment after the courses?
I would request any of the panelists to raise their hand and address this. Okay, we have again Professor Kaur and Dr. Pinna. So maybe we can just take 1 minute each to have both your answers to this. Yes, we can start with Professor Dr. Pinna. Please unmute your mic in 1 minute.
Yeah, this particular course which we have been involved in formulating with under DCBS is a very unique course where we have a very good bridge between understanding the mind from Western and the Eastern perspective, and so that it is giving a holistic perspective. Now we have to understand that the world is changing in a different direction now. Now where people, they are trying to give more emphasis on the subjective experience and the inner experiences, and also to develop their mental capacity to understand their inner experience, so thereby they can act upon that. So this particular unique skill is what it needs to be developed in any of these neuroscience or the psychological based courses, which probably may be lacking in the contemporary, the syllabus. But this DCBS is this unique. And what is the, if you have a good outcome of this, a professional outcome, you can be a good counselor. There is no doubt about that. You're a counselor par excellence. You can be a very good health psychologist. You can be a consultant, or you can consult any of these hospitals to become a counselor for the patients, or you can have your own counseling unit in your own place where you can do it, or you can get into core academics and try to understand the much more deeper into integrating the mind from psychology point of view, neuroscience point of view, and also with various other disciplines. So we have a very wide spectrum. And one thing what I want to approach is of course, see, having output in terms of having a job is, there is no doubt, definitely you'll be placed. But our approach to pursue this course should not be limited to have just a job. Job is just one thing, but we have to think further, okay, from having a job, what are the other things, okay, that we can really approach deep into understanding the contemplative philosophy and the psychology, so that we can be a very good contributor for the whole human society as such.
Thank you, Dr. Pinna, for putting it so beautifully. And I see Dr. Swar also raising his hand. Can we take that question a little later? Because now it is time for inviting Professor Kaur to speak on what is mind in her understanding and what is the role of mind in well-being. And probably in that time, she can also talk about the question that was last asked as to what is the prospect of psychology and contemplative study. So ma'am, if you can just combine all the three and give your message in the next 3 minutes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Please, yes.
Thank you so much, Rija. I feel that the previous response to the question has been, the previous response to the question has been quite nicely answered, and he's covered most of the points. And before I think I can, maybe I'll incorporate the answer a little bit, whatever I wanted to add in my presentation itself. Now, if I follow up whatever has been said by earlier experts in the last session, we can broadly say that mind has a cognitive component where we talk of thoughts, memory, language, imagination, and it can have non-cognitive components like, say, language and feelings, emotions. And all these are, well, not really housed in the brain, or brain is little different from what thinking or thought or mind as we conceive is. Yet brain does play an important role in how we interpret the information that we get from our environment, how we store it, and how, when we retrieve it, how we interpret it to use it for our day-to-day life and functioning. Different perspectives, say from evolutionary aspects, from cross-cultural, biological, or behavioral, or that of neuroscience, different perspectives have been put forth in the last few discussions, and I'll not like to repeat because 2 minutes are too short for that. However, one thing is clear, that if we trace development of mind from childhood onwards, it is how amazingly we assimilate the information from our environment in form of schemas, and then develop on those schemas to find an equilibrium on what are the demands of the environment and what we are giving to the environment. If there is a balance and an equilibration, then we are able, or our mind is able to perform well. We are at peace, there is tranquility, there is a sense of satisfaction, we are relaxed, and we are able to give our best with the mind. Now, again, different stands have been taken, but then few things are sure, that there is universality of development, maturational abilities take place, there is a progression of few of predictable patterns in whatever is happening in various domains of our development, whether it is development of emotions, we go through a certain sequence, whether it is development of language, again we go through a certain sequence or a pattern, or we go through a cognitive development domain, and there again we have a certain set pattern. Piaget, a very well-known psychologist, has given us 4 stages of development, where he's talking that, okay, think of a newborn who's just functioning at the level of reflex action or reflexes, and functioning at sensory motor level, developing his understanding of the world based on what he's seeing, hearing, what he's smelling, and then proceeds on to pre-operational thought, where the child starts showing intention, he develops language, he is able to interact, he is able to show imagination, he is able to dramatize, he is able to interact with the other little children, though initially it may be egocentric, he is only thinking from his point of view, and gradually he moves on to operations and logical thinking. And by the end of adolescence, though again it is debatable, do all children reach that stage of higher logical functions, which some of the psychologists have contended that not everybody reaches that stage. Now, again, other theorists like Maslow and Kohlberg and Freud, they again have given certain stage theories about development of personality, about development of morality. Yes, please. Richa, you want to say something?
Yes, ma'am. We will have to cut down on the time, ma'am.
Okay. So depending on how the environment and the caretakers and supporters deal with these different stages or requirements of an individual child, the mind of a child takes its course. So if we have supportive parents, the child will definitely feel very secure, loved, happy, and grow up to be a confident human being with various coping strategies to help him deal with mental health problems or crisis situations, be resilient, and take on whatever the world offers him, and not go into depression or feel inadequate to be able to handle those things. And if the parents are rejecting, then definitely he is in for number of social problems, which is going to hamper his sense of well-being. So the joy of childhood can be retained if sufficiently supported by the environment of caretakers, school, parenting, the peer group, or the extended family. That's it. So I think I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Professor, for bringing out the importance of the balance that we have to have between external environment and the inner conditioning, and also the important role that the environment plays in really nurturing the best in the individual. With these few words, I'd love to invite Swami Medhananda to kindly share his thoughts on what the mind is, its role in well-being, and also because of the situation of Amphan and less electricity, I request you to also kindly share your thoughts on the importance of such a course in today's context. You would have to unmute, Swamiji.
Cyclone. Okay, so now can you hear me? Yeah, so yeah, we don't have electricity here because of the cyclone. That's why I'm in the dark. I'll just speak very briefly about the understanding of mind from the standpoint of Vedanta. So Western thinkers usually contrast the body with the mind. They set up this dichotomy and they say that the body is physical and insentient, and that the mind is conscious, it's sentient, and it's immaterial. And they often equate the mind with the soul. Vedanta has a completely different understanding of the mind. Vedanta says that both body and mind are equally physical and equally insentient. It's just that the body is a gross form of matter, and that the mind is a subtle form of matter. This seems very counterintuitive because we usually think when thoughts come up in our head, we're thinking the thoughts, they're conscious thoughts, but that's not the Vedanta perspective. What Vedanta says is that both body and mind are physical and insentient, and that the only sentient entity is the soul, the divine soul within each of us. We suffer. Why do we suffer? This is one of the deepest questions in psychology, but also in spirituality. The answer that Vedanta gives is that we suffer because we mistakenly identify with the body-mind complex rather than with our deeper soul within. How do we overcome suffering? We overcome suffering by breaking that misidentification with the body-mind. We do that through spiritual practice. All spiritual practice is oriented toward destroying the ego, because it's the ego, that sense of ego, that makes us identify with the body and with the mind. The moment we repudiate ego, we realize our true identity as the divine soul within. Now, this also might seem very high-level, abstract spirituality. It's not for common people, but that's not true. And I'll just give you one very concrete example. There was a scientific study done a few years ago on alcoholics, people who suffer from alcoholism. And what they did was they told the alcoholics, they said, what we want you to do is anytime the thought of drinking alcohol or a desire to drink alcohol arises in your mind, don't fight it, don't get angry, don't emotionally react in any way, and don't try to suppress it. Just mentally label it. So it's this process of mental labeling. The psychologist told these alcoholics, you just mentally label each thought of drinking as it arises. That's the only thing you have to do. And they did it, and they found remarkable results. And that many of these alcoholics, through the sustained practice of this mental labeling procedure, were able to overcome their alcoholism. And what that shows is, and this is the Vedantic standpoint, what Vedanta tells you is that you are not your thoughts. And through spiritual practice, you can separate yourself from your thoughts. You can feel a certain kind of liberation. The moment you say, I'm not my thoughts don't control me, but I'm the soul who uses the body and the mind as my instruments so that I can realize God. So that's just one very practical application of Vedanta for psychology. And I'll just say one word about the department. I'm very excited about this new DCBS department, and I wish it all success. And it promises a new way of doing psychology that bridges Eastern and Western, ancient and modern, science and spirituality. And my hope is that as it matures, it will begin to produce a new generation of scientists, psychologists, mental health workers who are both spiritually grounded and socially conscious. Thank you. I have to leave now because my battery is dying. So.
Thank you very much, Swamiji. In that little short while, you've brought out very beautifully the importance that Vedanta gives and it's to the role of the mind and how it is connected to our deeper self, really. And just a thought on that, like in Sanskrit, we don't have the verb to have. So we just say that I have thoughts, I am not my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is a very helpful distinction linguistically to help
Excellent.
us.
Thank you, Narada. Yes, that's exactly right.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
So, thank you very much for being here with us in the circumstances that you're in. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
So I'd like to next invite the audience to share your questions, and we can just listen to maybe one or two questions there and then move on to Dr. Ravindran's sharing of his ideas. So Jyotiji, please.
So the next question is, what should be the role of the mind in maintaining a well-being in this current situation of COVID and cyclone and one thing coming after the other? So how does a person maintain this balance of his mind, and what's the role of mind in helping this balance?
Maybe can we invite Anupama ji to speak about this, the role of Anupama ji, are you there? Okay, till the time she joins us, Any other panelists? Yes, we have Dr. Neena Bansal who would like to speak her views on this question. Yes, Dr. Bansal.
Thank you, Jyotiji. This is actually a very pertinent question, which is troubling many of us today in these times of COVID, how to handle the mind. So as we have been talking about, Dr. Rao mentioned, mind cannot be handled from the level of the mind. So there has to be some intervention, and this intervention be like through awareness, through breath. We need to do some practices so that we are not into that, cycle of anxiety and fear. So I think the solution is to do meditation, be aware, get into some creative activities, and have that solace that this will be over. So this is just a trick to handle the mind, that the mind goes on a trip of fear and anxiety. What will happen to me? And this is happening with so many people these days, right? So unless and until we understand this is the play of my mind, and mind cannot be handled from the level of my mind, it has to there has to be some intervention through breath, through some practices, some yoga, some dance, music, some activity, so that we can handle the situation, which is very important for each one of us. Thank you.
Some of us have been asking, what is DCBS? They have been hearing DCBS, the acronym, since the beginning. DCBS is the Department of Contemplative and Behavioral Sciences, which is going to offer programs in psychology and contemplative studies at the undergrad, postgrad, and doctoral level from the academic year 2020, July end. Yes. So yes, Dr. Anu.
I'd just like to invite somebody else. So Dr. Ganeshji, if you would like to share your thoughts, maybe we can just listen to quick short sentences from each one of the panelists, so that we have all the different perspectives on how this particular crisis can be dealt with effectively from a deeper understanding of our mind stuff. So if I can request everybody to keep it short, but a quick answer from everybody would be wonderful.
Yes, a couple of words like shots, short, but strong. I'm just joking. Yes, Dr. Ganesh.
Ek samechu ubaya anavadharanam. At one point of time, only one experience is possible. The moment the mind is free, it has got scope to become anxious, it has got scope to become afraid, and all sorts of mental issues. The quick thumb rule is, whenever there are certain mental there, do physical work, get involved in some activity. The moment you get involved in activity, there is no scope for mind to think about these things. Only when you have a lot of time and freedom, then all these sort of things start happening. If you keep yourself busy with something which you like, there is no fear, no anxiety, nothing there.
Thank you very much. May I invite Dr. Ravindra to share his thoughts?
One thing we have to make it very clear. Why this so much of panic is there in COVID is only because the nature of the virus, because it is highly infecting. We have to make it very clear, it is not detrimental to life. Can you hear me? Yeah. So if somebody is infected with the COVID, who is a very healthy person, he is not going to die. Please don't have this panic. Because of this panic itself, I think people are becoming very anxious and panicky. Unless and until the person is suffering from any other comorbid conditions, right? COVID is not going to kill the person. Let me make it very, very clear. So if you can understand this particular fact, half of your anxiety, everything will come down. Rest of the anxiety is only because we are not used to be in the house and that's the issue. So that this is the real time for us to contemplate on ourselves and our capacity or our internal capacity, how strong we are, right? And how to engage ourselves when we are alone or when the environment is not so conducive of our needs. And also this is an advantage so actually I wanted to share as far as from the medical point of view is concerned. But of course we have to be self-disciplined and we have to take care of ourselves. When I say COVID is not dangerous, it doesn't mean that our behavior in the house or in the society should be responsible. Keep social distancing, right? Wear mask, maintain the instructions, but don't panic. It is not going to kill any healthy person. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these very important tips. If I can just have 2 words from Anupama ji once on this important role that you feel the mind plays in this COVID situation. So really short, because time, we just trying to keep track of time as well. So if you'd like to share, then Professor Kaur and Professor Suars, we'll just try and get 2 words, your tips on mind and its role in this context.
Like everybody is saying, we should always keep a positive outlook. I mean, of course, this is a pandemic and it's a very panicky kind of a situation, but just as in any given situation, we have to maintain our calm. Maybe we can take it as a positive time to appreciate the nature, appreciate our, and as Dr. Ravindra just said, that it is probably a time to learn how to discipline ourselves, how to make ourselves more stronger internally and as well as physically, if we can just increase our immunity.
And can I just ask you to, sorry, can I also request you to add your perspective as a musician?
Yes, so music is always giving positivity. So maybe listen to more music and maybe, I think that will definitely help in ignoring the fact that we are in a panic situation. So I would definitely encourage everybody to connect with the fine arts, connect with music and all the positivity.
Thank you very much. Professor Kaur, 2 words from you, please.
I think in this time of, COVID lockdown, we can make the best of it by spending quality time with our family members, picking up on hobbies that we've been doing and neglecting. I see that TikTok thing. It's so nice and it's so, it gives us some happy moments. So exercising, following up with your, regular prayers that we had been missing on, our religious activities, and drawing strength from the belief in our God. And I think being thankful and being grateful for whatever the God has given us. So drawing up a list of gratitude, this thing that helps you to just be optimistic and feel all is going to be well. So this shall also pass.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I think you brought in this very important point of gratitude, because the word happiness has its root hap, which means to feel grateful. So if you feel grateful, you can never be sad. So I think that's a very important point. And also maybe the fact that we need to concentrate. I mean, this is a rare opportunity to concentrate on cultivating a collective positive atmosphere, like you were mentioning. So thank you very much, ma'am. Professor Suar, may I request you to kindly share? Professor Suar? Okay, so I think we are unable to reach Professor Suar. I would now like to request Dr. Ravindran to kindly share his thoughts from a neuropsychologist, from a neuroscientific perspective on mind, its role in our well-being. You would have to unmute, please.
Unmute.
Yeah.
Yes. And we'll restrict to 2 minutes because we are running behind schedule now.
Okay.
Just 2.5 minutes, Dr.
Sure.
Yes.
So how do you define mind from a neuroscience point of view? So if I take the continue with Dr. Kaur's comment on that in the different stages of development of the kid, it has been associated with the development of certain parts of the brain. So we have this correlation between whenever a person develops certain psychological attributes, the functioning of the certain parts of the brain is being correlated or with the development. So we have this definition of the mind not as a whole, but the different attributes of mind, and that has been correlated with the different parts of the brain activity. It's from the neuroscience point of view. Now, see, there are 4 important principles from the scientific principle that I think I would like to give, that it can give a whole capsule of the message, how to say control mind or train the mind, and also what is the importance of say this contemplation. From the brain point of view, we have to understand that brain is not a rigid organ. Brain is malleable to change. Change because of the external environment, change because our response or the reaction to whatever the external input that we get, and most important is for the change of the mental environment that we encourage on ourselves. Suppose if I encourage to always to think upon the negative thoughts that are loaded with the negativity, the way my brain structure itself, the connect itself is entirely different. Or when I train my mind so that I always encourage the positive, holistic, divine, compassionate, empathetic thoughts, right? The way the circuitry that is generated or created in my brain is entirely different. So option is left to us. Right? If you want to be, if you want, your brain to be more effective and more efficient, more productive, right? I have all the liberty to rewire the mind the way I need. So this concept is called as neural plasticity. Please keep. The second thing is that brain and the other, it can be your stomach, intestine, you take any part of the right, there you have a very big, say, highway connection where it is communicating from the both the side. Something happens in your mind, so something happens in your changes in your brain, it gets its influence on the other parts of the body. Something happens in the body, right? It influences the mind, or it influences the brain. Now, having known that you have a bilateral Broadway highway connection between your brain and the other parts of the body, right? We have to develop a good cognitive, metacognitive skill to listen to the signals that these different organs of the body that will generate, right? Whenever our mind is in a particular state, right? It can be agitated state, it can be anxiety, it can be depression, or whatever it is, or at the same time it can be in the positive side also. So all these contemplative practices at a very ground level gives that very fine focused strength to the mind to pick up the signals from our body or from our viscera. So this is the whole scientific foundation when all these yoga practices is based on. When we pick up this particular signal, yes, then when I experience this signal, now I have all the freedom to change it. How do I change? I change by the changing circuitry in a long term in my brain, by the various of all these practices, right? So your brain is can be changed by changing your thoughts and your mind, and you have a bilateral signal between your viscera and your brain. And most important, we have to understand evolutionary, brain is always there for the goodness. We have to understand this. And this has been proved even with the many behavioral experiments with the infants who doesn't know which is good and which is bad. When you give it two options, which is good and which is bad, they instinctively, they choose for the good. So our brain is wired for the goodness, and we have to consciously act in that direction. And this is how I think all these contemplative practices will help us to go ahead with the wellness. Thank you.
Dr. Ravindran, thank you very much. Some very important points. Main thing is that talking about mind stage, you have very beautifully, coming from an expert, helped our audience understand that we are really the authors of our own script. I mean, the script of our life is something that we write, and the more positive stories we write, the better we will lead our lives. So thank you very much for that very, very important seed that you have sown in our minds today. With these words, I would like to invite Professor Swar to kindly share your thoughts on the understanding of the mind and its role in well-being, and also in this situation of Corona, because we missed hearing that from you. So in a few words, maybe in about 3 minutes, if you could kindly share your thoughts, we'd be very grateful. Professor Swar, you would have to unmute and share your thoughts, please.
Professor Swar, you will have to unmute. In the meantime, Dr. Ravindra beautifully spoke about the evolutionary nature of the human brain and that contemplative practices can actually neurosculpt. Yes, Dr. Ravindra, if I understood it properly. Dr. Swar, Professor Swar. Till the time we have Professor Swar, maybe we can invite Anupama ji to speak her thoughts on mind, its role in well-being, and also a small rendition so that we can experience how music and mind can beautifully be correlated. So we can have Anupama ji, and then maybe we can go back to Professor Swar.
Sure. Namaste, everybody. And it's a pleasure to be amongst the experts here. I will be speaking from a musician's perspective, what my understanding of mind or intellect or consciousness is all about. Being a classical musician, our basic training happens in studying the structure of rag and tal and basic structures of music. But at the same time, we are taught how to improvise and how to be creative in the bindings or in the structure of the rag and the tal. So I can always correlate it and say that we can always free our mind, and in spite of having all the duties, all the morals of do's and don'ts, rights and wrongs, our mind still has the capacity of creating. Our mind still has the capacity of being free and experiencing the freedom. And just as the classical musician performs and spreads, not only experiences this freedom and this creativity within themselves, they also spread it to the listener. Similarly, when we are in an enjoyable state, or when we enjoy the freedom or the creativity of the mind, we can also touch the lives of others in a very helpful way. And in a journey of a musician, initially it becomes with a very set of mundane exercises, some practice, riyaz, technique, all these things happen. But then eventually all this learning has to be undone, and we have to unlearn everything, and so that we can connect with the subconscious mind, or maybe the supremely conscious mind, which we can also, I have been listening to some experts saying it as a supreme consciousness or awareness. Just as Dr. Ganesh Rao also said that the mind has to move away so that we can connect with the awareness. So similarly, all this technique, practice, riyaz, all this has to be unlearned, and it has to be just the connection with the music, with the expression, with the emotions. And not only experiencing it, but also spreading it. Now, I have experienced it, and also whenever I listen to great musicians, when they close their eyes and they play, they are expressing a certain emotion, but the listener is listening to it with their understanding, their perception, and in the situation that they are in. But eventually, both the musician and the listener are in a unison to experience the elevated consciousness or elevated experience of music. So I mean, I was listening to all the experts, and we were talking about how this mind or this conscious state of mind. So we have always been taught that to be able to do good music, we have to transcend from the conscious mind. We cannot be thinking of traffic. We cannot be thinking of bad sound system. We cannot be thinking of how my hands are being frozen while I have to play in a cold environment. I have to ignore all these things and transcend from all these conscious disturbances into a subconscious state of mind where the music can just come, and I become the instrument, not only the instrument that I am playing, but I myself become an instrument and let the music flow through my mind and also help and touch the listener. Now that definitely connects to the well-being. If you come to that state of mind, that definitely gives a lot of well-being, because we can all see that the breathing stabilizes. Even when you listen to music, the breath patterns change, the mental state of mind changes. There is a lot of meditative kind of atmosphere generated, and the musician also elevates from the into a, I can say, as an elevated personality. They are performing and experiencing the music, but eventually it is touching the hearts and souls of many others, creating a well-being in itself. So although Anuradha ji had initially stated about Chanchalam hi mana Krishna, but the answer that Krishna gave, Asamshayam hi mahabaho mano durnigraham chalam abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. So all this definitely needs a lot of practice. And I was listening to Dr. Indrani that we have to train our mind for our well-being. I think that and this Bhagavad Gita quotation goes very well, that if with a lot of training, we can definitely achieve this state of mind and eventually the state of well-being. Thank you.
Very nice.
Yes,
It was
yes,
really
I
very
have to
nice,
play. I forgot.
Anupamaji.
Yeah.
Yes, can we hear an experience from you for
Yes, definitely.
about 2 minutes?
Yeah, just 2 minutes of a very devotional and a rag which expresses a lot of surrender, and that is rag Shri, which is also a favorite rag of Richaji.
That is a very nice surprise. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So beautiful, Anupamaji. Those just few minutes, I almost have tears in my eyes. That is the whole idea of this department, that every child who comes to study here is a beautiful balance of a human persona from inside to outside, and emerges as a contemplative psychologist. That can only happen when the teaching is all from the space of cross-discipline, from psychiatry to psychology.
If I have just half a minute, I would like to just briefly, there was one girl who had messaged me especially saying that she had to leave everything in US and come down here to India. She was doing her PhD and suddenly she had to come down because her visa was expiring. And after coming down, you know, we were just discussing this COVID situation and what Dr. Ravindra was saying. It's more about how we are feeling, not about the situation, the virus itself. So she was actually in a very state of panic as to what is going to happen in my future. And then she messaged me saying that this is the second time in my life when I have gotten peace by listening to your music. And she apparently then started listening continuously for over a period of time. She started listening to my music, or definitely some other people also. But she wrote specifically and said that somehow it uplifted me, and now I'm finding myself in a very happy state of mind, if not at a peaceful state of mind. So I think that is definitely an effect of music can do. So that is one of the greatest blessings that we can have. Arts, any form of arts, we should definitely connect with that.
Yes, Anupamaji. So that is the spirit with which this department is coming, wherein all contemplative art forms, cognitive sciences, neurosciences, Vedanta, everything is going to be given to the child, the student, who can really become a good contemplative psychologist and be very useful to the world. That is the whole idea. And we have all our panelists who are live right now, also as the advisors of the Department of Contemplative and Behavioral Sciences. And they would also be the visiting faculty to this department. May I take the honor to invite Professor Swar, if he's there? Professor Swar?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And I was talking to that one important point in the context of the mind is to counter the fear, anxiety.
So we've lost your connection, sir.
I think we have lost Dr. Swar's connection. Yes.
And so this is one of the things through which peace of mind can come. And that will act as a resilience of the mind to counter the COVID.
I think Dr. Swar is in Orissa, and I'm not too sure if the connection there, because of the Amphan cyclone, is stable. Dr. Swar, are you with us?
You.
Dr. Swar?
Yes. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. We are losing your voice in between, sir.
Oh, that is, my bandwidth is low. Second point that I'm stressing is that
yes, we are losing Dr. Swar again. So maybe we can come to the last segment. Yes. Yes, doctor.
Or the engaging in the activities that you love for, maybe music, or maybe art, or maybe dancing, or some other thing that for which you have a passion, so that the mind is busy. And also, third point I was telling is that the mind can get a boost for happiness or the well-being when you do something for others. Therefore, what we need to do to cheer up our mind or to bring that happiness in the mind. Third point is that whatever way it is possible, do something for others. Maybe helping a old person to go to the, or bringing the ration for him, or expressing the gratitude. When you are talking, expressing or talking with empathy, and when you are interacting, also you are interacting with a sense of concern for him or her as your neighbor, not as a person which you do not know or which is not within or among you. So these are some of the things that one needs to do, so that you can do something, whatever way it is possible, do something for the other, so that mind will get a boost and it will bring the happiness and well-being too. And there are already a lot of research evidence on that we are not capitalizing, but these three things is more important. In various forms it will come, so that the mental immunity will be created. And also the biggest challenge that we are facing because of this separation or the physical distance. And these are the ways by you adhering to the government regulations or the WHO regulations also, we can experience a happy behavioral feeling because it will also make us to feel safe that I will not be inflicted by the COVID virus, like maintaining the social distance, like using the gloves, and also washing the hands regularly, and these are the things which is popularly known to all of us. By adhering to the regulations also, the mind will get a boost that I will not get the attack by the COVID virus, and it will not come to me. So these are the points if you look into, then the mind will be resilient to the virus, and will also experience a sense of well-being in the family as well as in the surroundings. But at the same time, one most important thing is that the principal cause of the COVID-19 is the principal way we can avoid COVID-19 is the social distancing that we must have. And these are the various ways at the same time how you can keep ourselves happy and boost the mind or the mental resilience and make ourselves happy.
Dr. Anuradha, am I audible?
Yes. So
yes.
Thank you very
Yes,
much, Professor Swar, for your thoughts on the importance of being able to apply your mind. I think what was very new that you brought in is the fact that, and what also Dr. Ravindra had mentioned about doing something good for others. So engaging in goodness activities can bring in positivity in oneself in this period of apparent darkness around. So I think, Richaji, would you like to kindly talk about the course? And then it would be wonderful if everybody, taking into consideration the time, if you could one by one, we can invite you one after the other. So please give your invitation to the world really to be part of this course. So what would be 2 or 3 sentences that you would tell them that, you know, this is one reason why you should join this course?
So, yeah, I think one suffering that I have seen in my personal life experiences, that even though people have everything in their life, but majorly the mind always goes to what is not there. And whatever is the suffering is because our perspectives are many a times not healthy. We are not taught about it. And even if we have been educated about the mind, it is sometimes very peripheral. So having studied psychology and having been with a spiritual master for 20 years, I now realize that the dimension of mind needs to be approached not only from one field or 2 fields, but it has to be a multifarious approach. And only then this mind, subjectively, objectively, in whatever manner, can best be understood. This was the thought that gave me the idea to start the department, to ground the department on psychology and contemplative studies. And I'm very privileged that all our panelists are also on the advisory of this department. They have co-created the syllabus over months. We have discussed. So as we come to the last part of this session, it would be very nice to hear from the advisors who are seniors in their areas of expertise to tell everybody as to what is this whole spirit behind psychology and contemplative studies at Shri University that is coming up as an undergrad program, postgrad program. And the beauty is that one needn't have a background in psychology to study even the masters in psychology and contemplative studies. It has been opened. So we can start from Dr. Ganesh. We have about 7 minutes more to wrap up this session. So 1 minute each, on your thoughts on psychology and contemplative studies at Shri University.
You would have.
Yeah, you're able to hear me? Yeah. When I look at the DCBS and the courses offered in contemplative and behavioral sciences, the uniqueness which I am looking for, though it is also projecting it, is that it is not only you are learning certain thing, but you're also changing yourself in the process of learning. That is very, very crucial. So it is not only knowledge about something, but in the process of 2 or 3 years or 1 year, whatever course you're going through, at the end of the course, you yourself are a transformed person, a totally different person, who is able to convey that transformation to the betterment to the society at large, in whatever profession you adopt, whether it is, Dr. Ravindra gave it such a beautiful explanation. Okay, what is the job opportunities, a counselor, an advisor, or what would that becomes the second step. But the first step is, in the process of doing this course, you're open to so many influences that you cannot help changing to the better. You become a transformed individual at the end of the course. That is the strength of this course. Thank you.
Dr. Bansal, we can have Dr. Bansal next.
Thank you, Richaji. And thank you for, in fact, taking the initiative to start this course, which is actually very much needed, not only in India, but around the world. And coming from the background of political science, though it is categorized as a behavioral science, but there is so much to, take in from psychology and contemplation, because we need to actually contemplate deeply about very many things whereby we can be a game changer in political science, politics, and, contribute in so many better ways to making a better society, a better world, and better governance. Because what is politics? If you see, politics is about the mind. Everybody, if you have the basic understanding or basic definition of politics is, every individual has needs and aspirations, and in order to get those needs and aspirations fulfilled, you come into groups, and that dynamic interaction of groups with other groups to get their aspirations fulfilled is all about politics, and politics is everywhere, as we all see. So there is required a lot of contemplation as far as this behavioral categorized discipline is concerned. And I think this will be a very good platform for the students to learn in an interdisciplinary manner. Thank you.
Dr. Anu, your mic.
Thank you, Dr. Bansal, for those last important thoughts. I'd like to invite Dr. Ravindranji to kindly share your invitation to the audience for the course.
So this is one of the most unique and the wonderful course that I think we have drafted, and whole thanks to Dr. Richaji for her passion and one-pointed, focused, multitasking, right, and getting all the multidisciplinary experts into one stage and putting all this course. And why anyone should take this particular course? See, see, irrespective of what is your job opportunities or what do you think, first, as Ganesh Raoji mentioned, this particular course will really enable for you to understand yourself. Number one, that is very important. And most important is that you will try to unearth your own hidden lot of potentials. First, if you try to understand what is your potential, and that potential, if you can put across whatever the job that you go ahead, and you will be a better person whichever job that you take in. From this particular course, it's not only that you can be a psychologist or you can be a counselor. You have a spectrum of opening, and one important thing is having studied about the Western perspective, Eastern perspective, philosophy, theory, and also the practicum, understanding your own, you will be a best person wherever you are placed. And you will be the best manager for yourself and also for your team. This, from my side, it's 100% assurance. I think it is going to happen.
Thank you, Dr. Ravindra, for your insights about psychology and contemplations amalgamation. Can I invite Professor Jagjeevan Kaur to give her views in just less than 1 minute? We have 4 minutes to wind up the session. Dr. Kaur?
Yeah, Richa, it was really exciting and interesting to frame the syllabus. And while we were framing the syllabus, I wished I could be a student again and enroll in this course. There are so many dimensions, so many disciplines which are being taught either in theory or practicals, and topics and subjects that I have never ever seen incorporated along with psychology, which are very meaningful and which make sense, because sometimes when we are just studying a subject from merely academic orientation, or just trying to master the content without feeling the subject or without understanding the relevance or application of that content, it becomes meaningless and easily gets forgotten just after the exams. But if you're going to live that course, feel that course, experience that course, it is going to be really a novel exercise for all the students, and they'll be very lucky to be enrolling in such a course and finding out how these various disciplines are integrated, how they relate to each other, and how they affect our own growth and self. Another very important contribution that I feel this course is going to make is not only enrich the students, but even enrich the subjects. Because till now, our studies, research methodologies, measurement tools, everything has been more or less Eurocentric, whatever we have been taking from Western countries, or earlier whatever tools are already available. But for any research study to be effective, it's very important that we develop interventions and incorporate components which are culture specific. So this course would definitely enhance development of newer methodologies, newer tools, which are specific to Indian culture, and taking full advantage of the rich heritage of traditions, culture that India has. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaur. Yes, Dr. Narada.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for bringing in especially the cultural perspective and adding that as a USP of this particular course. I would like to invite Professor Sur to kindly share his thoughts on the...
Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
My first, I was involved in the...
We lost your voice, sir, again. Professor Swan. Maybe till we have him back, we can have Anupama ji.
And second point, I like to stress that this course is designed in such a way so that research has got a prime focus in this course, which I also love, and people also after
We are losing his voice, I think, due to the poor connectivity in Orissa. Yes, we can have Anupamaji and Viplav. Maybe we can mute Dr. Swar.
Human resource managers, because they have a specialization in OB and HR. Okay. My time is over.
Sir, we lost your voice in between. If you can repeat.
Oh, I don't know whether the network bandwidth is low. It is all the time writing. So I don't know what is happening. All the time it is writing network bandwidth is low.
Sir, you can just give the gist in 2 words, because we lost your words in between.
So it is interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary in nature, and it will bring a new cadre of people who will deeply think for making decisions that will make them effective as well as make other people's lives effective also.
Thank you, sir.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. We heard this, sir. Yes. Okay. Dr. Swar has been an integral part of designing the curriculum on research. Yes, we can have Anupamaji as the last panelist on her views.
So I think this is a beautiful and a very transformational course offered by Sri Sri University, and hats off to Dr. Richaji for taking upon her, and with a very dedicated and a very I would say a guided path she has taken this course in. And the reason I find it is very beautiful is it connects the inner world with the outer world. And as one of the experts were saying, that the behavioral sciences is the outer world, how we normally face the world as, and the contemplative studies being the inner self study of our own goods and bads and strengths and mostly disciplines. So I think this is a beautiful bridge that you are making, and anything that has a setu, a bridge, always gets a very it can always uplift not just the person who is doing the course, but also the people who they are going to eventually affect and contribute to. So I would definitely encourage everybody to take this course. And as Dr. Kaur was saying, even I feel like probably doing this course and somehow enrolling, because it does seem like a very transformative and a very, very interesting multidisciplinary course. So I would definitely encourage all the people all over the world to come and take this course.
Thank you, Anupamaji, one of our senior panelists who is not here on this session today. She was saying that psychology has had different paradigms, from Freudian to behaviorism to cognitive, and this new paradigm of contemplative is the next hallmark in psychology. And my thanks to all the panelists for actually making this happen, who have been working behind the scenes across months to write this course. And of course, we have an interdisciplinary approach from art forms. It is called Contemplative Studies Open House. We have that. We have contemplative traditions from the world. We have psychology, we have neurosciences, and we have Vedanta. We have everything, the best of East and West, all amalgamated to beautifully offer these as pure academic programs in psychology and contemplative studies at both undergrad and postgrad level. And yes, once again, I reiterate that one doesn't need a background in psychology to pursue these courses. There are bridge courses, and the department is going to help all the sincere seekers to emerge as contemplative psychologists who have good market employability, but at the same time, they're grounded within their source. They have the best of academic rigor, and they have a holistic mind view to the whole thing. That is the intent of this department. And all our panelists are on the advisory board and also will be teaching many of the subjects, because since many of the things are being introduced for the first time, so they will have to play the role for the next at least couple of years till we have the first batch of students who can become teachers for such streams going ahead. So with this, I would like to thank all the panelists once again, and Dr. Anu. We have Sanskrit also. I forgot to mention that in both our undergrad and postgrad programs for 4 semesters across both the syllabi. And thanks to Dr. Anu for giving a fantastic curriculum on contemplative Sanskrit in the course. Thank you so much. And thanks to Jyoti and Viplav for handling everything so beautifully. Viplav, can we have you on the screen?
I would also just, Richaji?
Yes.
I would also just like to say thank you very much to all the panelists and to you for giving this fantastic opportunity. And I think those who have been part of this would be greatly enriched by what they've heard today and also be equipped to face the modern crisis that is there. So thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Richa and Dr. Anu.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank the audience for being there.
Thank you. Thank you. We can leave the session. Thank you.